What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to where the weird ones are.
Yeah. Weird ones only, we talking that truth. Ghost in the attic, yeah, show me the proof. Aliens creeping, they light in the roof. Minds wide open, we shatter the booth. Conspiracies deep, we dig in the scars. Demons and angels and bodies on Mars. Cryptids be watching, they lurk in the dark. Mental on edge, but we glowing like stars. Welcome to the pod, no cap, it's a seance. Whispers in the static, spirits doing dance. Reptiles in suits, yeah, running the lands. MK Ultra made a puppet of your mans. Wendigo hunger, dogman strut, flat woods, eyes glow. Slice through the cut, Bigfoot tagging trees. Marking the trail, weird ones ride, no room for the frail. Talking about trauma, talking that soul. Peeling back layers, we dig in a hole. Sacred geometry, numbers align. Ancestors speak through the veil and the sign. Ayahuasca dreams, third eye lit. Shadow self lurking, we making it spit. No mainstream lies. This the dirt where the weird ones rise from the blood and the hurt. Weird ones only, we talking that truth. Ghosts in the attic, yeah, show me the proof. Aliens creeping, they light in the roof. Minds wide open, we shatter the booth. Conspiracies deep, we dig in the scars. Demons and angels and bodies on Mars. Cryptids be watching, they lurk in the dark. Mental on edge, but we glowing like stars. Voices in the woods got chills on the neck. Black-eyed kids at the door, now we check. CIA tapped in, fluoride drip. Project Bluebeam, watch that script. Talking about grief, talking about fear. Talking about why them voices appear. Healing the mind while breaking the chain. Spiritual warfare deep in the brain. We don't run from the strange, we live in the strange. Tattoo the truth and the scars and the pain. Stay weird, the mantra we own in the name. Reality bends, so we bend to the same. From the attic to the swamp, we tracking the freak. Where the veil get thin and the silence speak. We ain't your norm, we off that grid. Weird as the wave, yo, this where we live.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? This is Drewski from Cryptid Warfare and Conspiracies Podcast, and you're listening to Kevin on Where the Weird Ones Are.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Today's episode is with Nurse Nicole. It's an amazing one. We learn a lot about organ donation, a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of different things come into play and all that. We talk a little bit about the conspiracy about being an organ donor, about she pretty much dispels that, where they see it if they see it on you. First of all, I kind of didn't agree with it either anyway to begin with. It was just something because of the topic that we were talking about, which is why I brought it up. Um but when they're like doing the life-saving things, they're not looking at your license to identify you. They're focusing on saving your life, so they're not gonna see if you're an organ donor or not. But anyways, it's a really intriguing and interesting conversation, in my opinion. I enjoyed talking to Nicole about this. Um, I could probably talk to her about pretty much anything. It would probably be interesting to me to if I'm being 100% honest with you. I think she's an amazing person. So, all of her links will be in the show notes. So go please check her out and all the things that she is doing. But quick shout out to the sponsor. I'm out, by the way. I gotta get some more. Um, Flavors of the Forest raw garlic dust. They freeze dry it. It's phenomenal. I really enjoy it. I put it on everything. Um, they do a really good job. Matt and Nelson over at Flavors of the Forest. So go check them out and get yourself some bottles for yourself, and you will realize that I ain't lying. Um, so yeah, that's at flavorsforest.com. Go get yourself some. Tell them that I sent you. You can also follow them on Instagram at Flavors Forest. But so this week, I brought a word of the week for you, and I chose the word liminal. I'm sure a lot of you already know what it is, but maybe some of you don't. So, how to pronounce it? It's null. Um, it's a pretty interesting word. I'm gonna have to say. I'm not gonna lie to you. I really enjoy this word, liminal spaces. But the definition is liminal describes something that exists in a threshold or in between state, not fully one thing or another. It's the feeling of being on the edge of change, transition, or transformation. So, example, walking alone through the foggy woods at dawn felt strangely liminal as if I were standing between two worlds. So, yeah. If you're writing a weird book or a story, I think it's an intriguing word for to use for horror, mystery, and stuff like that. So yeah. So make sure you check out next week's episode when I bring you a new word of the week. But um, if you're experiencing any kind of mental distress, please here in the United States dial 988. That is the mental health hotline. They are equipped to help you with any mental health needs you may have. Also, if you're not the one experiencing the distress, you can still call them to help your friend, partner, child, mother, father, whoever this person may be to you, random homeless person on the street. They will provide you with the things that you need to help your friend. So I think it's a very useful tool and I think you should utilize them. I talked about a couple weeks ago the Piscataqua Bridge here. It goes right over um, the Piscataqua River, which is a channel coming in between Maine and New Hampshire. And at the beginning of this year, a classmate of my daughter's of my kids chose to leap off of it, and he didn't survive. So they posted a whole bunch of 988 signs up on that bridge. I didn't know it, and I'm from this area. I didn't know it, but I guess a few people have chose that route um, off that bridge. It's not as significant as, the Golden State Bridge in San Francisco, but um, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to take care of ourselves because how are we going to take care of anybody else if we're not taking care of ourselves? It's like RuPaul says, if you can't love it, if you don't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Um, so yeah, take that with throughout your day, and I think the world would be a better place with a lot more love in it, you know, listening, communicating, healthy disagreeing. You can disagree with somebody and still love them. So, with that being said, let's get into today's episode with Nurse Nicole. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love her. She's amazing. I think I can call her a friend at this point in time. So yeah, check all of her stuff out. Also I shut down the Patreon real quick. I shut down the Patreon. And I'm gonna be reamping it. I'm gonna be adding two new podcasts, a book club, and then I'm gonna be doing paranormal and investigations and adventures. Just kind of like random adventures, whether it's like cryptid research or just going for a bike ride with my cousin or something like that, that I'm going to be doing. And all those in paranormal investigations and stuff like that are going to go on the Patreon earlier than they will on the YouTube. So we're gonna make a YouTube for that specifically. It's gonna be called Where the Weird Ones Go: Paranormal Investigations and Other Adventures. Um, it's gonna be me, my cousin. My son wants to tag along for the paranormal investigation, so he'll probably be a part of that. Um, yeah, we'll see what kind of evidence we get out of that. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. Obviously, I don't expect anybody to become Patreon members. If you don't want to, it's totally fine. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm just happy that you are here and we get to spend some time together. All right, let's get into this shit with Nurse Nicole. Where the Weird Ones Go Production. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. So happy to have you here. So glad that you choose to listen and or watch every single week. I greatly appreciate it, and I greatly appreciate you. So today I have a returning guest, Miss Nurse Nicole. She's an amazing person. Love her very much. Love her content that she posts about. Um, and last time we had a fantastic uh, discussion about vaccines, and today I think is going to be another fantastic discussion. But anyways, I'm gonna let her introduce herself to you guys in case you didn't listen to the last episode, so you can find her and all that stuff. So, Nurse Nicole, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. The last episode, I think, was really great. We covered a lot of topics related to a very controversial subject on vaccines. And for those of you that may not know, I go by Nurse Nicole. I have an Instagram account at hold_the line CLNC, where I have a certified legal nurse consulting background in addition to 20 years in the healthcare field, predominantly in the cardiac realm. I have done all things related to open heart failure patients, air medical escort, product rep, and also one of the biggest ones is being a heart transplant nurse, which took place during the pandemic, before, during, and after the pandemic, if you will, and something that is very near and dear to my heart. And very exciting that we're going to be talking about that today, as it is a very controversial subject for various reasons. And I'm really hopeful that I'm able to shed some light on some things, not only share facts so that people can understand exactly what it means to be an organ donor, but also some personal encounters and different things that I have been blessed to be a part of when it comes to donating life and giving people a second chance. And so I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Nice. I will say this. I personally just started being marking on my license that I am an organ donor, especially since I've chose to be a lot more healthier in my 30s than I was in my 20s because I mean, I still drink and stuff like that, but I was doing everything under the sun, a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. And there's a conspiracy about being an organ donor. And back then I was just like, I don't want to subject myself to that. If because I lived a little more recklessly. I mean, once my son was born, I was like, hold up, we need to check some shit. But I still did, like, I drank a lot more than I do now. I smoked a lot, which my lungs needed I felt like my lungs needed to be healthy in order to be an organ donor. And I was just like, nobody's gonna want my fucking organs back through my 20s. But lately I started thinking about it, and especially in my 30s, I feel like 30s are more of middle age than 50 is. Just because there's so many people that are passing away in their 60s and their 70s, like and 80s rather than 100. So the statistics there are more. So like I started thinking probably around like 33, 34 about end of life. And then I was just like, and then my health, I started doing a lot better with my health and stuff like that. I was like, I know what, I'm gonna be an organ donor. If there's something useful that is gonna save somebody else's life, I would like to do that. But the conspiracy is that if you are an organ donor and you are on the brink of life, they're not going to resuscitate you in order to grab those organs from you. So at the same time, I'm like, mm, whatever, I guess. If it's my time to go, it should be my time to go. They shouldn't revive me anyway. But um, what do you think about
Yeah,
that?
I'm aligning with you on a lot of what you're saying. It's obviously kind of confusing for people because the thought process is that you should be in perfect health in order to be an organ donor. And I will tell you that until I became a heart transplant nurse, I didn't know that there were different variations of being able to donate. And so, just to kind of touch on that, you know, for you to be able to turn your life around and want to do things that keep you more healthy, kudos to you just in general, because you made a very valid point. Um, Gone are the days that most people are living to their 80s and 90s and even hundreds because of so many things going on in our world, the food, the water, the soil, our meat, and what is being injected into our bodies. Unfortunately, middle age, like you said, is pretty much in your 30s and 40s because the average age for most people in the United States is usually in their 70s. And that obviously can vary based on a handful of things. But so it's really important that people want to do the right thing and take care of themselves, just as an overall generalization, so that you have a better quality of life. Although some may argue that they want a better quantity. And so they may not make lifestyle changes and they not have great health, but they feel like they might be able to live a little bit longer based on some of their choices. So the big controversy, like that you just mentioned, the conspiracy theory is if you have organ donor checked on your license and something catastrophic happens to you, that first responders are not going to step in and try to save your life. And I can speak only to the United States because we all know what people do around the world in some of these third world countries and on the black market. It's a thing. Okay, I'm not going to deny that because we do know crazy things happen. But in the United States, although there's a lot of stories and reels and kind of clips that are being taken out of context that are being posted all over, and in my opinion, to spread fear. Um, I have never, ever, and I've done ride alongs with the fire department, I've done ride alongs with EMS, I have been in the emergency department. Never, ever have I, in my 20 years as a nurse, had someone come to us that needed life saving help. And the first question we ask you is, are you an organ donor? It is totally irrelevant. Nobody is asking that question. We are bound by ethics and a duty to do no harm. And I sometimes feel we do intervene, like you mentioned briefly, when certain times we may not because of the aftermath that happens to the patient that nobody wants to talk about or address. But that can be another topic for another day. So ultimately, the whole thought process is when you are brought to us or something is brought to our attention that is in need of life-saving intervention, we do everything under the sun that we are legally bound to protect the person as a whole and try to preserve life. And so I do think that that is something people really need to understand, that that is not something in the United States that we do, or you don't really hear a lot of that in the beginning part. You usually hear that people have been revived, resuscitated, maybe in ICU, and next thing you know, there's a conversation about their organs being taken. So I want to make sure we separate those two just to start, that there is a initial process of you being brought in and something is very wrong, life-threatening, and the teams are coming in and doing everything to save you. No one is asking what your organ status is, if you're a donor or not. Never happens. We even may have it on file, but no one's looking at that because at that point, we are to do no harm and do everything possible by state law to protect you. But then there's a second portion to this that most of the time we're hearing on the news or seeing on social media that someone's on life support and now there's conversations being had to take their organs and kind of the perception that comes with that. So we can speak a little bit more to that shortly, but I want to make sure that we do separate the two because those are two things that are confused when people are discussing this topic, and really do matter when it comes to the hierarchy of how we are addressing individuals that may or may not be an organ donor. Um, and I don't know if you're aware, there is a state donor registry, and then there's a national registry. And depending on your state law, you are usually opt in or opt out, meaning you have to either sign that you want it and you are having that placed on your license. And in some states, it may be automatically and you have to opt out. So you would really want to know what your state law is to make sure that you have that information so that you know if you are technically giving consent to be an organ donor or not. Were you aware that there was two different registries?
No, I was not at
Yeah.
all. I just thought once you were like marked it on the sheet of paper when you're get renewing your license or whatever, that was it.
So there is a common misconception that there are just the state registries, and
Yeah.
understandably so, because when you go to the DMV, that's all you really know about. But for the listeners, there are two different registries, and it is required by law that in the event something was to happen, that both registries are checked to verify if someone happens to be an organ donor or not. And that can be related to specific issues that may be going on with the patient, not necessarily that we're moving forward to do any kind of organ donation. But there is two different registries.
Wow. Wow. So it's interesting that first of all that is even happening and they don't like tell you, I guess. Um, but I just went and got so have you heard of this real ID frickin' bullshit that's happening?
Yeah.
So I'm literally I've never flown a frickin' plane. I've never been in a plane before. Never
Okay.
flown ever in my life. And I had to I'm flying at the end of this month to do a high rocks competition. And I've talked about it on here for listeners or whatever. It's a 5K. It's kind of like an obstacle course thing. You do a bunch of workouts in between running and shit like that. So I just want to do it to see if I can finish. Anyways, we booked the flight and I find out that I have to have this real ID thing and I'm like, what I have a real ID. It's right here. It's physical. It's
Yep.
as real as it gets, you know what I mean? And then come to find out you need this fucking star on your license. So I'm like, fuck. And it's like 3 weeks away. And I'm like, how fast does this? So I had to expedite the thing. And I went and they needed a birth certificate, evidence of your your um
Residency.
your residency, yeah. Two forms of it. So you have your ID and then something that gets mailed to you and then your birth certificate. I brought my birth certificate, but it's the one that I got from the hospital and they turned me away. And I'm just like, fucking A. So I had to drive all the way to the city that I was born in and shit like that to get the birth certificate, which somebody told me that you could just get it from the town you live in. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. And I could have just went down the street. I drove an hour to get my birth certificate.
Thank God you weren't in this. I mean, you weren't out of state. I mean, you could.
Right, right. Um, so anyways, I'm finally sitting down and I'm filling out the paperwork and it asked me to be an organ donor and I marked it and it was at the beginning of this week and I was just like, hey, I'm gonna talk to Nicole about this. Um, and it reminded me that so when you say that, like it doesn't say state or federal at all on the paperwork. It just says, do you want to be an organ donor? Check yes or no. And that's
Right.
it.
So, because of laws, they have state supersedes federal usually. So you would always be, adhering to the state that you live in. And so when you are going to the DMV and they're asking you this, you have the option to say yes or no. And there's a lot of people who have had it on their license that are really concerned and feel like all these conspiracies and everything are actually true and want to have their donor status removed, which is a whole different process going through the DMV. But just for the listeners, you can do that. It's just more of a process that you have to take. But also, you have to reach out to your state and the national registry to make sure that your name is taken off. So just because you go back and decide to remove it from the DMV and discuss it at a state level does not mean that at a national it is not going to show up or there's not going to be some sort of flagging. So it is important that, however you decide to go about it, you know that there's two different registries, and that is just something in the back of your mind. Typically, what happens is people will opt to be an organ donor, and there's various types of donors. I don't know if you know that there's like 4 or 5 ways you can be a donor. Most people think it's only a deceased donor. That is the ones we typically hear of more on the news,
Mhm.
but there are things like live donors, pediatric, tissue, bone marrow. So it doesn't just relate specifically to being deceased. And why it's so important people educate themselves and understand that there is a variation, that you could be a live donor for someone in the sense of, say you and I, you say that you need a kidney, and we have a close type of genetic makeup, and I decide to be on the registry, and I go to get blood work, and I say, I know Kevin and I want to donate my kidney, am I compatible? And it happens to be where I am. That would make me a live donor. I can live with just one kidney and I could help you. And so people have done that, in addition to a lot of like cancer patients. They may need bone marrow donors and different things to help try to reverse some of the cancers. And so people can be bone marrow donors, which is a little bit more extensive. But my point to saying all this is that it's not just you're declared brain dead, which is another topic we'll cover, and automatically people are snatching your organs. There are variations that you could participate in to still help individuals. So you checking that box starts that process. Additional ways to help in donation may require additional consent, but it does allow you the opportunity to help people in different ways, not just when you're deceased. For every person that is actually deceased or considered brain dead, you can save up to 8 people. And so it's really imperative that people understand that there are dozens and dozens of people dying every day waiting for a transplant of some sort, and that includes children. So it's not as prevalent as people think. And another thing that I hold near and dear to my heart, because if it truly was being done in the fashion that the conspiracy theories are saying, we really wouldn't have this many people dying waiting to receive a second chance of life. So they need to
Right.
understand that it's a very multifaceted process here. And so for this podcast, I will just speak more specifically to being deceased, or a brain death donor is typically how people understand it. And people will say that brain death is a controversy. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that before I elaborate on it, what it means to be brain dead, because people will say that that's not a thing, it doesn't exist, and that it's a play on words, and why it is a false way to declare someone brain dead and then proceed to be able to take their organs, and where family is being taken advantage of in a way. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that,
I mean,
or what it
there's
means to you.
I mean, to me, it just means like, so your body's not moving. You're still there though. Like to me, if you're alive, your brain is still active, regardless, no matter what.
Right,
Because I feel like the brain is basically the root of the tree. You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
So it's where the electrical current comes from for our
Hmm.
bodies to make for our bodies to our organs to be pumping and being like,
Right,
hey, fucking let's work. We're breathing, where our heart's pumping blood and shit like that. Is just we're just like, and I think
right,
there's a difference between being brain dead. Like the term they use for brain dead is when you're just kind of like a vegetable, but your brain is not dead. Your body is technically become a shell, and so that's my view on brain dead.
it's
And then
it's yeah.
what's the quality of life after that, you know?
Yeah, that's that's a like an ethical thing for me, and again, probably for
Mm-hmm.
another podcast. But you did explain it pretty well. Essentially, the idea of brain death, first of all, has to be done by multiple physicians. You can't just come up as a physician and, even though the patient is clearly not responsive, be able to say, we're going to go ahead and declare them brain dead. There has to be more than one physician willing to put their name on it. There's a series of tests that have to be done to show that there is no, I'm going to say this kindly, no one upstairs. Like you said, there's something called a parasympathetic and a sympathetic nervous system that no matter what happens to me, for the most part, my heart is going to consistently keep beating. My eyes are going to keep blinking. There's all these things that we don't think about that just automatically happen. And those things sometimes do not happen in stages when somebody's being declared brain dead. Like their heart is still beating. They may still be breathing, but there's no neurological response to talk to one another. And ultimately, it is a declaration of the individual not being there. They're not aware that you are there. They cannot speak to you. They might be able to move, but not, again, I don't want to how technical we want to get, but there's a lot of things to it that tests will show. Yes, the heart is beating. Yes, they may be breathing, but there is nothing there to understand that the outside world is going on and you receiving that. We can see that with the lack of response to the eye, maybe a blown pupil. And a lot of people need to understand that we have people come in all the time that have certain disease processes or accidents or injuries that if you didn't know any different, you would think that they were brain dead. But really, like, for instance, a traumatic brain injury, horrible motorcycle accident or car accident, you could have these individuals be brought and they have a whole slew of things going on. And you spend days to weeks and sometimes months giving their body sometimes to heal, to decrease the inflammation that may be pressing on certain things that are giving you the perception that this person may be brain dead, and they may not be. They just need time for their body to heal. So we don't just receive someone and automatically go, oh, they've been in a horrible accident and they're not responding, right away, and now we're going to declare them brain dead. There still has to be a series of things that happen. There has to be a checklist, a hierarchy of things that have to be completed by more than one physician. And usually second and third opinions are obtained, because rightfully so. Families want to make sure, right? That we're not just pulling the plug, so to speak. But the big issue is you have to be, and this is where I try to figure out how to use my words. You still have to be with your heart pumping and your blood circulating. You cannot give an organ to someone if you, as the one giving it, is not alive, meaning your heart's not pumping and you're not breathing. An organ would be dead. You can't place a dead organ into someone. So a lot of times, 100% of these individuals that are deceased organ donors or those who are declared brain dead are intubated with a tube down their throat, and they have a ton of medications that they are on to continue this process, if you will, to keep everything moving, pumping, circulating, until there is a declaration of brain death. And then the decision is made between a third party, which I must stress because this is a very misunderstood topic. As a nurse who worked on the transplant unit, I had nothing to do with the say of who gave organs or did not. The surgeons that I worked with had nothing to say specifically to the individual. It is a third party that comes in separate from the hospital who speaks to the family and reviews the case and looks at all of the things to see if they even qualify. Most people don't qualify because of certain things with their health. A big one is heart disease or diabetes. Most people are not aware of that. Automatically rules you out. If you're not intubated, which means your organs are now no longer vital, they may consider you for skin, maybe cornea, but you can't give away your organs because they're not perfusing. There's no circulation. There's no oxygenated blood. They're dead. So there's a variation of how this works. Most of these individuals, they have to be intubated. And so the thought process that people see is, well, they're still breathing. Their heart is still pumping. They're not dead. They're not brain dead. How does that make sense? Like, you're wheeling them to a surgery to have the removal of their organs, they're still alive. So there's this very big misconception on what does being alive mean. And you mentioned like a vegetable. That is something that people usually correlate with individuals who are physically there, physically not here. So for the listeners, I'm pointing to my head like they're not mentally aware. There's no, outside stimulation, they're not able to do anything for themselves. There's a lot of things that are keeping them going, and a lot of times that's medication and stuff. So a third party has to declare that, and then family has to agree. Even if you're an organ donor, although it's a little bit harder, your family can still say no. And when I say your family can still say no, family that are assigned to you and are documented with power of attorney and healthcare surrogate. So if you are an organ donor, Kevin, and you are married in the state of Florida, your wife would be the one to give the final say. If you weren't married, it would be adult children in the state of Florida, I'm speaking. And then it could go to living parents. Just because it's on your license does not necessarily mean it's going to happen. And so there's a hierarchy depending on the state who would be able to dictate this. If you and I were together and we weren't married, but we had been together for a long time, and I'm on your documents, meaning I'm your point of contact, I'm your emergency contact, but there's no legal document to say that you give me consent to make decisions for you, and I come and I say, nope, I am not giving credit to that, like he's not going to donate his organs, and they say, well, it's on his ID right here, they can fight that because I'm legally not tied to you. There's no one, you know what I mean? So I hope I'm making sense of that. There has to be documents for that, which is why it's so important that at our age, although it seems very young, especially if you have children, you have living will, power of attorney, healthcare surrogate paperwork filled out. God forbid something happens to you, that your spouse or your significant other doesn't have to make really difficult decisions, and or there's things in place for your children in the event something happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then talking about this too, it makes me think of Stephen Hawking, you know, with the brain dead stuff, like, because I think they were considering like declaring him brain dead, and he was able, I can't remember if it was him specifically, but he was able to articulate to make that machine that he rode around in for that computer so that he could speak, and literally the only thing he could move was that one hand.
The situation is a little different. A good one that you may have heard of, may not, Terry Schiavo. Have you ever heard of
Nope,
that name?
I have not.
She was, I'm going to get this story. It's not 100% of my brain, but I even believe she was in Florida, if I remember correctly, who was married.
Yep.
She was married. She had something happen to her that put her in a vegetative state.
Mm-hmm.
The husband refused to, I'm using air quotes, pull the plug. She had no anything. Like, she laid there, was fed through a tube, had a catheter to pee, she was a full total care patient. There was nothing she could do for her. She had no awareness. So the husband, because he was legally married, even though she was in the state, and then the parents, for 15 plus years, fought in the legal system to keep her, to not keep her, to pull the plug, to not pull the plug. And because of the loopholes and the way the hierarchy works, and I hope I'm not getting it backwards that it was the parents and not the spouse, but either way, fighting for decades to figure out what to do with her, because she was just, God forgive me, a rotting corpse in that sense. She just required all this care. She had no quality of life. And why I say on multiple podcasts, it is so important you designate someone to carry out your wishes based on what you want. Because I mean, my spouse and I are a little different, but I know spouses that will like drag you out to the ends of the earth. They don't care. They're like, as long as you're here, physically here, I will do whatever. Meanwhile, you have no quality of life. You have nothing that you could do for yourself, all these things. So I always tell people, be very smart in who you elect to make decisions for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be your spouse. As a certified legal nurse consultant, I have helped people that don't even know me, who are don't have a spouse, or maybe they don't have adult children that are local, and so they will put my name on paperwork. They'll go through things that they want and what they don't want, and in the event something tragic happens, I would be the one that they would call, and then I'm the one to help carry out those actions where a spouse may not be able to, or they're no longer with us, or there's no children, etc. So it's
Mm-hmm.
so important that you have that, which ties into the organ donation, because if it's on your license, they're going to proceed unless there is a legal document or individuals that can legally say otherwise, to be able to stop that process in the event that they don't want it. Because for your listeners, you may not understand that if you don't check that box on your license, it does not mean that as a nurse in the hospital, I am still required by law for every person that passes, whether on a ventilator or not, to call the registry and submit your information for review. It is law. It is state law, especially in the state of Florida. So whether
Mm-hmm.
you have it on your license or not, we are required to start that process. Then the third party gets involved and takes over from there. But for those that may not understand, it doesn't matter if it's on your license or not. We are still required by law to call and start the process. And then from there, a series of events will unfold. But in order to have that happen for a deceased or considered brain death donor, we have to have someone being deemed as brain dead, go through the checklist of things, and or if you're not intubated, which means no tube down your throat to breathe, and you pass, that we just call to see if you're a candidate for tissue, skin, or cornea. We are required to do that. So I don't know if people are aware that that has to happen either.
I'm not aware of any of this, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Am I
I
blowing your mind? No, I'm just kidding.
a little bit. Not. I mean, yes and no. It's interesting because a lot of people don't realize like the things that they need to have in motion, like things that they need to have. Just like you said, like the power of attorney and stuff. No matter what age you are, you should
Yes.
have it. You should have that with somebody that you trust to carry out your wishes. Like I told my son is my number one beneficiary because he's the oldest at the moment, and I told him we were out shopping. We were at home. My frickin' furnace shit the bed, and we were out looking for parts, and I couldn't find them. But we were coming back to the grocery store, and we're gonna go into the shoe shop real quick. And as we're getting out of the car, and as we're walking towards the store, this old lady, she wasn't very old, but she was old. And the whole ground is salted. There's no ice, but she's like walking in this way like there is ice, and I was just like, is she walking like that because she has to? You know what I mean? And she was being very careful stepping off the curb and stuff. I was like, Brayden, if I ever get like that, put a bullet in my fucking head. And he's like, I can't do that. And I was like, what? And I was like,
So many people
he,
can't though.
yeah, no, I know. I mean, I get it. I get what he was saying, but I
Right.
was like, literally, if I can't function and I can't do things on my own, I don't want to be here.
I agree. That's a very controversial subject all in itself, because the topic of organ donation spans not just from like personal feelings about it. There's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
that religiously cannot, per their religion, donate because they are supposed to go into the afterlife whole,
Yeah.
and donating organs is not a that's not a thing. So there's a lot of things that play a role in this, and so that's why it has to be clearly documented and there has to be things in place. But like you said, it is so important that you have these documents. And once you make the documents, you can always change them. People get so
Yep.
worried that once they do it, it's like finalized. And oh, what if I have a falling out, or I get a divorce, or I've changed my mind? You have the will, the right to choose and to change it. You just have to make sure you follow all the steps to make sure that that happens. You have so much power over yourself, your health, your autonomy. You just have to know what your rights are, and a lot of people don't know because it's a topic that nobody wants to talk about, and I feel like it's more taboo because we always want to celebrate life, as
Mm-hmm.
we should, but death is also imminent. I mean, that is part of life. And there's nothing worse as a nurse that has ate away at my soul that I have to this day I've not been able to really manage very well, is when I see a patient suffering and they tell us when family is not in the room how much they just want to give up, or they just cannot go on any longer, or all of these other things. They've been fighting and everything else, but they stay doing it because they don't want to disappoint family, and or the family is constantly coming in like, you could do this, like keep going and all this other stuff, but not really putting themselves in that position of the individual who doesn't get to go home at night because they're in the hospital, who has all these problems taking all these medications, their body is
Mhm.
failing them. So when something happens, because ultimately it will, and there's no documentation, there's no paperwork, and I have family that panics, and is like, do everything and let's do all this other stuff. And meanwhile, the patient doesn't want that, or has stated multiple times, like, this just isn't for me anymore. Like you said, like, let's do what I don't want to do this, um, people just make really bad decisions when they're put on the spot, and they emotionally react. And we want
Yep.
to teach people to take out the emotion part. If you, as in Kevin, is saying, I don't want this, I don't want to have a feeding tube, say you had a stroke and you can't speak and you can't do this, you can't do that, and you're a total care patient, which means you literally can't do a single thing for yourself. You're forever going to be in a rehab center, may or may not have visitors, may or may not have good care. Like, I can keep going. There's a lot of things that can happen that people don't want to do.
Mm.
You have the right to say that you don't want those things and go about, other ways of taking care of that end of life, if you will. That is not assisted suicide or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the process of the United States when it comes to allowing someone to make the choices for their health. But if you have somebody that you appoint that is not willing to carry out your wishes, this is why we have a lot more people in nursing homes and rehabs and places that there's no one to visit. There's no one really caring for these people, because to them they're better just being alive and there versus like having some sort of quality of life. So that is a whole other thing as well, which is why it's so important, to have those documents, especially if you have children, because if something happens to you, then there's a series of things that you would want to make sure that your child or children have in place. But for organ donation, it's essential to ensure if things move forward or not. And so for me, I'm an organ donor. I've talked about this a lot. I will forever be an organ donor. Like you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. If there's going to be some sort of sketchy scenario, which, I don't know, like, that's probably how it was supposed to be. I don't really know. To me, to die with my organs, knowing that I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of people in the eye who are struggling with the fact that they're on an organ transplant list, that forever changes you as a person, because they mentally are aware that in order for them to have a second chance, someone is going to have to die. That's a bit
Mhm.
of a mind fuck that people don't talk
For real.
about.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're taking people out just to make this happen. It's truthfully like nature taking its course, and someone not only being a donor and family allowing it, but also being a perfect match, because we have to match your blood type, your antibodies. It's not like we just take one organ from you and put it into someone else. It doesn't work like that. There's people that can wait for months to years, and a lot of them die waiting. And so to
Mhm.
know that you're on that opposite end, and when you get that phone call, because it's essentially a phone call, hey, we think we have a match. You have 90 minutes to get to the hospital. The amount of emotions going through someone is absolutely insane, because you're like, wait, there was actually a match. One. Two, holy shit, this is happening. I could be given a second chance at life. And then it's like, okay, I'm celebrating. Another family is grieving.
Yeah.
I mean, people just don't talk about it. So I always see it from a different side, because I saw that side,
Mhm.
and to me, it's like, why would I want to die with my work? Like, so yes, all of those things. it's heavy, but it's part of life.
Very heavy.
And
Absolutely.
yeah. So
I think about with this topic, I think about the movie John Q a lot. Um,
oh yeah.
because his son needed was it a heart? I think he needed.
I don't
I can't
remember. I think
remember,
so.
but he needed something. He needed something. I'm pretty sure it was a heart. And he holds a whole entire hospital hostage in order to get his son this transplant. When come to find out that the hospital just was keeping him on this list just to because they were getting money for the list or something. I can't remember exactly how it unfolded, but there was a conspiracy that the hospital did things in a certain way to make money, even without actually helping people that needed organs, or
So
that they would
valid.
jump the line and shit like that. I guess is
Well,
another thing that was talked about in the movie, I believe.
I think they say Rothschild, one of the Rothschilds. I could be wrong
Mhm.
again. He
Yeah,
had
I
what,
mean,
8 heart transplants, which I don't know. Fact check me on that because I'm not 100%. But along those lines, that money does can okay, it can be a thing. I obviously did not see that side of it because I dealt with everyday human beings, but partially of what you're saying is true. When someone donates, you would think as the donor that you are going to receive some sort of compensation, your family is going to receive something for giving the second chance of life. That does not happen. The hospitals are going to make money essentially taking this person for the procurement team is what we call it, and they remove the organs and then fly them out to wherever in the United States where the person meets, and then the person receiving it receives the organ, but then obviously becomes a lifelong customer of big pharma and in the health industry because now you've got a foreign organ, even though there's a match, and you are forever going to have to be on immunosuppressants so that your body doesn't attack that organ. So you are not only getting the second chance of life, which is amazing, but you're going to have to pay into a system now for the rest of your life because you don't want to reject this organ. And there's medications and testing and different things you have to be careful with. And one of the big things that, I also bring up, which is very controversial, and I get it. But I think it should be said because of the shock factor that a lot of people don't understand is in this current realm of healthcare since the pandemic and all of the things, in order to receive an organ, you must be 100% vaccinated. This was even before the pandemic. No surgeon, with the exception of children, which is still, you still must be vaccinated, but it's a little bit different on how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
You must be 100% vaccinated against certain disease processes because the surgeons believe, why would I transplant a perfectly good organ into someone who now is not protected against everyday viruses that could potentially hurt them and the organ? So it's been a very controversial subject. And then when the pandemic hit, especially in Florida, although we changed that law, I was part of a group that helped change it. You had to have the COVID-19 vaccine. And that's when I saw my patients as a heart transplant nurse dying. When they would receive the vaccine, they wouldn't do well. And that's when I came forward and was talking about it and like put myself out there, and they thought I was crazy. But since 2023, we changed it so that the COVID-19 vaccine is not required even for transplants, but all the other vaccines are hepatitis B, MMR, all this other stuff. No surgeons are transplanting patients unless there is a very specific criteria without being vaccinated, which leads me to my next comment. It may change your mind, but it's fine. If I am unvaccinated,
Uh-huh.
I can give you my organs. I am unvaccinated, I can give you my organs. If um, I am unvaccinated and I want to receive an organ, I cannot unless I become vaccinated.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
so yeah.
Say you're unvaccinated and you need a transplant, you can't get a unvaccinated transplant. Like, so say you need a heart. and I'm about to pass away. Neither of us are vaccinated with COVID. Um, would I be able to give you my heart?
You could, but I would have to be vaccinated before they would allow
So
it to
you
be
the so they
transplanted.
would you okay, so they'd still require you to get vaccinated.
So the recipient must be vaccinated no matter what.
Okay.
But I can still
Wow.
give it. So that is why a lot of the uproar happened during the pandemic. People really outraged. They're like, I'm going to take myself off the donor list. Like, this is crazy. I can give, but I can't receive, all this other stuff. And it's a thing. I mean, and again, but this sparked because of the COVID-19 vaccine. People didn't realize this has always been a thing, whether it's COVID-19 or not. If I don't have all
Yeah.
my vaccines, they're not going to do it because of the way the disease processes and all these other things work. The surgeons feel like the risk versus benefit is too great, but people are fixated on the fact that if it's COVID-19, which is respectfully understandable, but it's not just
Yeah.
COVID-19, it's all of them. And so it is a thing, and you have to be vaccinated in order to receive. And again, children are a little bit different in the requirements, but I'm speaking to adults. And so that is a huge thing that people kind of started talking about and coming forward to say, like, what the hell, like, what, like, this is crazy. So there was a lot of misinformation out there that it was just COVID-19. And so I hope people understand that this has been going on for decades. It's always been there's always been an adult vaccine schedule, just like there's a childhood vaccine schedule. We just don't talk about it a lot as adults because most people after 18 years of age, unless you are in the military or you have a job like me in healthcare that requires certain things, you don't really get vaccines because you don't really see a need, and rightfully so. A lot of times you don't need it. It's irrelevant, but there is an adult vaccine schedule. So if you're not caught up, they will make you get all of them before you could receive it. And then the other thing that I find very interesting that I never knew about until I was a transplant nurse is I had this one patient who had waited, I mean, it was almost a year. She was very sick, in and out, older African American lady. And I remember the surgeon called and he's like, I think we have a match, which was like crazy because she had specific antibodies. It was this whole big thing. And so anytime that happens, they come, they speak to the patient. She happened to be in the hospital at that time. And the surgeon comes in the room and it's just the surgeon, myself, and the patient. And we're sitting there and he's discussing, okay, I think we have a match. This is what's going on. But I have to tell you, this is a high risk donor. And when I heard that, I was like, what does that mean? Like, and so for those that may not know, we do offer, or there are the options at times that you may be presented with a high risk donor, which means in the heat of all the things that are happening, the exchange of information when a decision is made is rapid. Obviously, it's time sensitive. If someone is about to donate organs, you have to move very quickly. So
Hmm.
there's a handful of information you're going to know and maybe not know. And for this particular situation, the doctor said this individual had a history of alternative lifestyle, um, possibly, same sex interactions, and also had a history of IV drug use. And
Uh,
but they're a match, and
mhm.
says, because at that time we don't know any, do they have hepatitis, do they have HIV, we don't know any of that. We just know this is what we have, this is what's going on. And when I tell you, Kevin, she did not bat an eye. She's like, give me the paper to sign. Did not bat an eye. She was like, let's fucking go. And I was like, do you want to think about this for a minute? Like, do you want to talk about it? Like, this is a big deal. And the surgeon goes, as crazy as this sounds, we can treat HIV, we can treat hepatitis.
Mhm.
So I can't always find you a heart that's going to match this well.
Mhm.
But I can help you treat these things. And I was like, what? So moving forward, very valid point. Because the organs are so limited, there is a chance that you could always be presented with one that may not be 100% healthy in those aspects. And people have the option to say yes or no. And she said yes immediately. She did not consult her family. She didn't give two shits. She's like, let's freaking go. And she ended up being transplanted and ended up doing very well. Ended up, as far as we know, not having any issues once things were ran and testing and all that after the fact. But that is a thing. And we've also had where we've gone through the whole thing, talked about it, patient has signed, everything's good to go, and then the organ is flown in. I've had this happen twice, just twice. And the surgeon's like, absolutely not. That organ looks like trash, not doing it. And had to go back and tell the patient, I am absolutely sorry. This is absolutely devastating. I understand, but I cannot ethically put this organ into you. I don't think that this is going to work based on a handful of things. And we're going to have to restart the process because I just don't feel like you're going to do well if I transplant this organ, which I never thought could happen either, but it can.
Yeah.
So there are different variations of this that can be presented that, again, when people are like, oh, we're snatching organs, we're not helping people, we're not doing like all these things that we've talked about, nobody talks about those things. They don't talk about all the nitty-gritty nuances. They just think like, oh yeah, this is the thing. And I'm like, there's so much more to this than just not saving people and taking their organs. Like it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like
It's
I don't
super
know.
interesting, the in and outs of a lot of things that you know of, but you don't know about them. So, like organ donating, I just assume that, whatever organs I have that are good are just going to go to somebody, which ultimately, obviously, from a lot of things that you're saying, might not happen anyway.
You can save up to 8 people. My cousin had a well, she had an addiction to painkillers, and
Yeah.
she fought that tooth and nail. And then she also had an epileptic. She was epileptic, so she had a seizure disorder. Anyways, she was in her early 30s. She was trying to get clean. Fell asleep on the couch. She ended up having a grand mal seizure. So it shook her
Oh,
so bad that when she was on the couch, she started seizing, it flipped her off the couch and face down on the ground where she couldn't breathe. She couldn't move her head because she was seizing so bad for so long. And anyways, she was found by her son, her adolescent son. He was 8, 9, and at the time her significant other was a medic. They were able to revive her, but she was deemed brain dead. And they are very religious. My aunt and uncle are extremely religious, and they really struggled with this. They could not believe it. They had third, fourth, fifth opinions. Like, I mean, it was, they had to be able to work this out themselves. And long story short, she ended up donating liver, heart, and some other things. And you have the option to make it an open donation, which at some point the family who gave the organs is able to make the choice if they want to reach out to the individual who received it. And I can tell you, as a transplant nurse, the recipients want nothing more than to be able to say thank you and speak to the family and meet them and all this other stuff. But more often than not, the ones that donated are so thick in grief that they never allow that to happen. They don't want to
mm-hmm.
meet. They don't want to meet the person, and so it is something that people can choose to do, but a lot of times do not. And so it is something that I think is very interesting. And you know, working as a transplant nurse at the time when she passed and before that, it was a stark reminder to my family of how important it is to give the gift of life. And they were able to make that decision, very difficult at that. But, and I think they have a little bit more comfort in knowing that they were able to take such a tragic situation and turn it into something positive, even if it wasn't for our family. And that's really a big takeaway for a lot of people, is if you have the capability to do it and all those things that we've talked about in this podcast align, that you can actually change people's lives and buy them more time. And I've met people who are able to graduate high school, get married, have children, watch their grandbabies grow, just all of these situations, because the stars aligned, God came in and all these things happened, and they were able to get this gift of life. So it is very much near and dear to my heart because it's also happened in my family. And so for me, it was just like, it's a no-brainer. But I do understand, because it's so complex, where people get confused. And it's really disappointing that the media, social media, and other people who aren't involved make comments and say things when they're uneducated And I'm not saying that anything is 110% correct or that there isn't corruption, but overall, this is not a one and done. Like you have to go through so many things to fail in order to be like, okay, we're doing this. And then you see it on social media, like, oh, girl was, being wheeled to the surgery center and, to steal her organs. And then she wakes up and starts talking. Like, that is not normal. That's not, so there's something that maybe went amiss that we didn't hear about. But overall, always just know where your sources are coming from, know how to research, because it's a lot of fear and putting things out there for people. So, yeah.
And be careful in China and North Korea.
For sure, no doubt. Well,
There was a lady that that I was listening to on TikTok. She escaped North Korea. I guess it's really for North Korean citizens, it's really hard to get out. But she got out and she talked about organ robbing, harvesting. There we go. That's the word. Organ harvesting in North Korea, where they would if they thought that you were less important or whatever and somebody needed something, they would steal it from you, and that would be something that you could live without or something that you can't, and so they would kill you in the process.
yes.
Or just take it while you're sedated. And
Yeah.
she has a whole platform where she talks about this stuff because she wants people to be aware and to be careful when obviously traveling. There's so many people that love traveling to other countries and stuff, and
Right.
it's super dangerous because especially Americans, for some reason other countries just really want Americans, and I don't really know what that's about. Although, like, I'll be honest with you, America has the ugliest people, mainly because we have everybody.
Well, like, I'm just going to make a bold statement here. I mean, well, and yeah, I mean, I could say a lot of things to that, but other countries are not held to the same standards. And there are a
That's what I'm
lot of,
saying. Yeah,
there's a lot of corruption, and there is a lot of money to be made. I am not going to deny that. There are things said that women are basically breeding children to be sacrificed in this way. Like the rabbit hole is deep. It is disgusting. It is dark. You are 100% correct. You have to be very careful, especially when traveling. And what that looks like safety wise, just in general, because as Americans, we are targets in a lot of places. And so, but with organ harvesting, 9 times out of 10, it's to take so you're no longer living. It's not to leave any residue behind so that you could come back and say, I'm missing a kidney because I can live with just one. It is solely profit. And so yes, there's a lot of countries that do this, and there's a lot of accounts of people that are basically being groomed and subjected to being brought into this world specifically just to be taken out for this. So I cannot speak saying that that is not happening. I'm speaking to the United States, but you definitely
right.
nailed it there. You definitely nailed it there. And I've even heard in the United States people make comments and accounts. All I'm saying is, because I don't have the legal documents, I can't say for sure if this is 100% true. What I'm saying is everything that we've covered in this podcast has to happen, and there are a lot of steps that you have to fail in order to do this on a United States level. And just know what your resources are, and just make sure that you're doing your due diligence, to make sure that you're understanding like what exactly happened. Because like the subject we were talking about before we started, with the recent young lady being taken out by the ICE agent, you just have to have so much information, right? We can't just see one side. There has to be a lot of things brought forward so people can make the best informed decision on how they want to go about this. Otherwise, it's going to be demonized by the media, and it just causes more division and more confusion. And we don't want that. We want people to feel like
Yeah.
if you have to seek medical help or something is happening to you, I don't want you to think that my first thought is, what is your organ donation status? That's crazy, especially in the United States. It doesn't happen. That's not what we do. We are taught to preserve life in whatever fashion we need to. And then once we do that, and then certain things happen, then there may be a conversation. But even if all those boxes check, there still could be a situation where you cannot donate. And it just is what it is. And then that process stops there. So I just hope people really understand that it's very deep, multifaceted. It's not just a one and done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that I like to do, especially now in my middle age, is like whenever I hear something happening, I always try to have as much information about it before I really have an opinion on it. Just like the situation with that woman who's the same exact age as me, um, was killed by ice. All there's a whole bunch of factors that went into that, and I don't think either side was right. In my personal opinion, after watching everything, I don't think either one of them were in the right. Um, and that's my opinion. Whoever
And two
wants to
things
fight
can
me
be
about it.
true.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
two things can be true.
Hmm.
Yeah, two things can be true.
So, um, but anywho, so I wanted to ask you for the vein of the show, where I talk about a lot of paranormal and supernatural things. So, in with the organ donating, have you ever heard of a situation, or maybe even witnessed to a situation where somebody gets an organ from somebody and they start kind of like taking on personalities of the person that they received the organ from?
So it's called Transference.
Uh-huh.
It is a thing.
Okay.
I have seen it. I don't know if it's going to be as pronounced or as prominent as most people would think, but there are numerous accounts of individuals who have been transplanted, and I've seen it a handful of times where they almost have these visions, these emotions, these feelings that are different prior to them being transplanted. And they assume that it is due to the organ that they've received. Being a heart transplant nurse and seeing people receive a heart, which is incredible that this can even happen in this day and age, because it's a 12 plus hour surgery. There's a lot of things involved. I mean, you're talking like minute, everything has to work. It's so godly to know that these surgeons have this capability of doing it and why they're such assholes. But neither here nor there. They're brilliant, they're smart, and they are very capable.
They're
And
very
so,
pompous.
yeah, they're very, yeah, I've had some serious encounters, but these individuals will report these dreams or just these feelings, or like maybe just more emotional than normal. One guy was a complete like raging butthole. He was the only person in all my years that I'm like, you have gotten so much meaner than even prior, just so entitled and everything else. It was the weirdest thing. But it's called transference. It does happen. I have seen it happen. And why in the cardiac realm I feel like it's even more spiritual, because your heart is so intricate, and we have so many emotions and feelings that are stored in our heart, because there's always these things you hear about, your brain versus your heart. Two totally different organs work two totally different ways. And to know that these individuals have received a heart and then take on these feelings and just have these experiences that they've discussed that they cannot explain otherwise,
Mm.
is absolutely incredible. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that is something that a lot of people don't talk about or they think is not really real. And I can say, out of this almost 6 years that I was a transplant nurse, I did see it, because a lot of those patients come back to us for various reasons, and they're like our family. So I know them before they get transplanted, during, and then after. And to see this whole change is incredible. And why a lot of them are like, it's kind of weird, but this is kind of how I feel. And then with those open donations, they find out, like, yeah, the person that I received an organ from was a middle aged male who used to do X, Y, and Z, and it kind of explains why they feel the way they do or have different feelings about it. And it's really crazy, because you wouldn't have known any other way. So yeah, definitely, it's called transference.
That's incredible. That
Hmm.
is incredible. Because I think spiritually a lot, obviously with people listen, with my listeners and everybody watching. Like, I'm more like I definitely see I've seen some shit, basically. Let's just say that. Um, and to like know that like because there's medical professionals that have seen some weird shit too. There's people that are in EMS in the ambulance that have seen weird shit that they can't explain. And I just think that that lends more credence to our spiritual being. The fact that I mean, yes, we have a physical body, but I don't think that we are our physical bodies. I mean, it's fantastic. Some people get the most the Rolls Royce of bodies, and other people get a broke down Buick. And you know, it's it doesn't mean your spirit is less beautiful. It just means you just gotta roll with the dice that you've been given. But um I just it's fun to hear from professional, especially medical professionals, um, that lend credence to a spiritual being, and I love hearing those kind of stories. Have you ever? So this is less of a serious question. It's more meant to make people laugh than anything. But have you ever heard of somebody getting uh an organ donated to them, and they happen to be a little flamboyant and they become more manly, or they're very straight and they become very gay afterwards?
Taking care of hundreds and hundreds of patients that at some point had received a transplant or maybe were waiting. I've never personally experienced it. I see more of the emotional, like you said, spiritual side of it.
Yeah.
It would be quite interesting. I can't say that I have, but I don't know. Have you
Could you
ever heard of?
imagine though? Could you
No.
imagine you get completely straight, you get a new transplant because you needed one, then you're like, man, I really want to, do some things that I've
Yeah.
never done before. But and that I mean, that wasn't a serious question, obviously. It was more jokey. I think I've seen Family Guy make a joke about this before. No, I just thought it was
Really?
funny.
No, it's actually a great question. I mean, so transference is a thing, but I've never seen it like with
Yeah.
sexual orientation. I
Yeah.
will say though, I mean, not to bring it back down, but I will say, I don't know if you've ever heard of Takasobo cardiomyopathy. Have you
What
ever
the
heard of
fuck?
that?
No. No.
So I saw it more during the pandemic, and again, like not to drag it back down, but there is a thing, truthfully, called broken heart syndrome, and that's the technical term,
Yes.
Takasobo cardiomyopathy. We see it in individuals who have had significant loss or
Hmm.
something really tragic happen. We saw it a lot during the pandemic, loss of a loved one or a child, um, where the patient presents exactly like someone would having a heart attack. The symptoms, the high blood work, just the EKG, all of the things are showing like this is a heart attack, and we rush them to the cath lab and we do all the things, and then within 5 minutes the doctor's like, yeah, this isn't a real heart attack, it's Takasobo, and then we get them out of the surgery and they go to the recovery room, and the doctor talks to them and is like, hey, have you had anything? I'm like, yeah, I lost my spouse a week ago, and just like that. So it is something that people would say was kind of taboo, wasn't really a thing, but I am here to
Yeah.
say that it is a true thing. It is broken heart syndrome. It is something that we see in a lot of people, and it presents just like a heart attack in all ways. But when they go in to see what's going on, there's no blockage, there's no clot, it's just the heart muscle that has been so affected by trauma that it has presented almost like a heart attack. So we do see that as well, and is something that I always tell people, like you mentioned, like you can have the best body and you can have all of these things, but internally, if you're not well, stress kills, trauma kill, like it attacks your organs, and so many
Hmm.
people have this happen. And so it's so important that the internal part, the spiritual aspect, whatever you believe in, that you take care of that, because it does, especially your heart, can affect the health overall. And so many people take that for granted, and why it's so easy to just kind of like, oh, it's not really a thing. But anytime something happens to you that can be traumatic or whatever, it does kind of etch away at your soul and also your organs. And I think people just kind of undervalue how that really is a thing. And so I wanted to make sure I put that out there as well.
Yeah, I've heard several stories of the broken heart syndrome stuff. I've heard from friends that, their father died, and then a month or two later their mother died,
Yes.
and or grandparents or whatever. And I feel like my grandparents are reaching their end of life. They're in their 70s. I think they might be just about 80. Anyways, regardless, they've been together since they were 18,
Yep.
17, you know.
We see that a lot, and that's actually a lot of what I saw when I worked in the other cardiac areas of healthcare. Families would just be like devastated because they would lose a family member, and then
Mm-hmm.
the next thing you know, within days to weeks, this family, the other spouse was being brought in, and the family's just like, what is going on, and then they end up passing, and it's because they've just been together so long and they don't know any different. Now they don't have their person, and the body just says we're checking out. And so people don't think that that's a thing, but it really is. And why it's so important that you always try to surround yourself with people that want good for you and that bring out the best in you. And nothing has to be perfect, but enough to where you do understand that toxic individuals, trauma, things that bring you down really do affect your organs, your vasculature system. If you're constantly in fight or flight mode, if you're constantly aggressive, like we're all on social media, keyboard warrior, all this other BS,
Yeah.
like that does stuff to you internally that
Mm-hmm.
affects everything. And people just go along being in this high fight or flight. I'm in it because of previous traumas, the pandemic, and just what I do with the vaccine injured and all that. I'm always heightened. I should know better, but do as I say, not as I do. But it is a thing, and so I think people just need to know that it does matter, and you have control over that, and that can help keep you healthier longer.
Yeah. I I I keep my vibration at a pretty even keel. When uh, when anybody has something negative to say, I usually try and just joke with them. And they take me as like I'm seriously trying to argue with them, but I'm usually not. I'm just
Right.
talking. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm gonna say this real quick for everybody who's listening, whether you're on my Facebook, you're on my Instagram, you're on my TikTok, you're watching on YouTube, whatever. If you write me a really long comment, not gonna read it. Whether it's positive or negative, I just don't have the energy to read a book that I'm not interested in reading. So like if it's really long and it's positive, I'm not gonna know that it's positive because I'm just gonna be like, I'm not gonna take the time to read that. So like especially when I post something that I know people are gonna argue with, if it's a big comment, I don't read it and I just comment back. I didn't read your last comment, but I commented back just because I felt like it was funny. It would be funny to say something back. So,
True. It's so
uh,
true, though.
that's
I'm
that's where I'm at.
But there's people out there paid to agitate. I mean, there's people out there that are
Oh
just
my
they're
gosh, yes.
like it's a thing. Like we know this, right? But in the heat of it, people want to be right. We live in a society of instant gratification. We all want to have the last word. As an Italian, okay, I get it. I'm a Taurus. I'm like I'm gonna fight tooth and nail. But at the end of the day, it does nothing but upset me. And then they just kind of get to sit back and just be like, this heifer took the bait. And so I'm like, it's a lose lose. So I'm learning as I get older, it's not worth it. Like you said, like even
Hmm.
though it may be positive, I have to really, because people are just in it to just attack your soul on all levels. And to me, that energy, all of it, like you said, the vibration, if it's not good, I mean, it can literally make you sick. And this is why all of society is sick, because they're stressed out. They're fighting about stupid stuff that doesn't matter. They're not picking and choosing a little bit better. And then adding all the crap they eat and drink and everything else. Like we're human, things happen, but it all has
Yep.
consequences. So you got to be real smart about it. So I agree with you. Hats off to you. I'm going to try to be more like Kevin. Hashtag be more like Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, when your ideology becomes your identity, you run into problems. So,
Truth.
because
Yeah,
then
I know
if
that.
anybody has anything that they disagree with your ideology because your ideology has become your identity, then it feels like an attack.
Ooh,
So,
that's some snaps. That was good. That was good. No, it's true. Well, and it's just implementing it. But again,
hmm
You know, we live in a day and age, everybody wants followers and clicks and this and that and all. And I'm just like, to hell with all of this. Like,
Oh
what does
my
your
gosh.
soul look like, man? What is your soul? Like, I need to know, like, are you intelligent? Like, can we have a conversation? Like, can we disagree and it not be like the end of the world? Like, all this other surface shit and everything else. I'm like, I don't care about any of it. I care if it's
For
five
real.
people versus 5,000. I want quality over quantity always. And I will die on that hill. And people will constantly say stuff to me and like insinuate. And I'm like, you do what you got to do, boo. At the end of the day, like, I could be a size 2, banging all these. You're not going to care. Like, I could be super sweet, super intelligent. You're still going to fight with me. So that's why I hope people understand, like, all of these things play a role into how you vibrate as a human and just live and shine light in darkness, which we lack all the time. But you know, people are just very willing to comply. They're very willing to just go with the norm, and I'm here
Mhm.
to all of that. So
I will say before we kind of end this, but there's only three opinions that I care about. There anybody else's are it doesn't matter to me. So the three opinions that I care about are my kids. I have three children, and those are the perspectives and opinions and thoughts that I care about. Everybody else it doesn't matter.
I like it. I do.
So
I appreciate it.
also also you don't have to be a size 2 to be beautiful. I think you're gorgeous the way you
Thank
are.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Which is why you're married. Hello.
Well, I'm no walk in the park, but as we were saying, people when they don't agree, right? You know, because I'm
Yeah.
spicy, I'm Italian, all the things. That's what they do. They just come for different things that they feel like they can. And so I bring that up. Not that I don't care. I mean, I am the way I am, but it is interesting the way people decide. Be like, I don't agree with what she says, or she's not fighting back with me, so I'm gonna just say all these things about her weight and everything else. And I'm just here to say that for other people that can be absolutely devastating, right? People
You're
take their
right.
life, they take their life, like they cannot cope. I will meet you out back in the parking lot and we'll handle it, like we'll go, you know, but ultimately not everybody can do that.
I
And that's
know
why I say
people.
I know people,
I'm
right? And
part of the family.
it's me. It's her. I know her. Yeah. I will take you out. Figuratively speaking on the podcast, we don't get anything banned. You know, but other people don't have that. And so again, vibrating higher and trying to be a good human being does not mean that you're a doormat and you let people walk all over you, but also like be cool, man. Like just realize that
For
not
real.
everybody has the capacity to handle some of these keyboard warriors, and words matter. What you say could be repeating in someone's head over and over and over and over again. And I've seen it in healthcare. And then they do really horrible things to themselves, eat themselves to death, drink themselves to drink, all the things,
Yep.
because they have such low self esteem. So we have to do better as a society and want to be kind. And if you have nothing good to say, then stat a zit, is what we
Say
say in Italian.
nothing.
Stat a zit, quiet your mouth, and go about it.
Absolutely. Well, Nurse Nicole, this was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you taking the
You're
time
welcome.
out of your day to do this. It means a lot to me, first of all, just because I'm not trying to catapult my show in any kind of way. I just love having these conversations. So the fact that people like you are so willing to donate their time, because time is our greatest currency,
Amen.
regardless of what you think. Our time really matters, and the fact that you chose this hour and a half or so to talk to me means the absolute world to me. So I want to say thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being brave enough to have difficult conversations and not shy away from it, and also being willing to engage and post it, because I think knowledge is power. And even if people listen and they don't agree, it's a thing, right? And we want to be able to inform people, and you being brave to do that and putting things out there is really important. And I just think you're an amazing human being. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. If you don't mind letting the listeners and viewers know one more time, in case they missed it
Mhm.
in the beginning, where they can find you and everything you do.
Yes, so I am a Friday Q&A host on AmericaOutloud.news on the Nurses Report on Fridays, and then also on Instagram. It's hold HOLD underscore the line CLNC, and that's where I do a lot of this stuff when it comes to medical freedoms. And then on Twitter, it's HENNAC03, so Hennessy 03 on Twitter. Thank you.
Dope. I like it. I like it. So go check her out if you're interested. If you're not, then that sucks, I
Stalk
guess.
it. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're fine.
But yeah, for everybody listening, check Nicole out if you're interested. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, leave a rating and review, do all those things because I would greatly appreciate it. Especially if you enjoyed today's show. Please share it with everybody that you think might find it interesting. Also, if your podcatcher does not allow you to leave a rating and review, please consider or do so. Oh my gosh. Please consider doing so on my website, where the weird ones are podcast.com. That is also where you can get merch like the shirt behind me. You can get hot sauce, you can get coffee, you can read some short stories. I just wrote a second book and I published last week. The Adventures of Rizzo and Weird Son. Monster Hunters, Blood in the Bayou. I bring to life a couple of my friends as characters in the story. So if you're interested in that, please check it out on Amazon. Other than that, I think that's all I got for you guys. So thank you for watching, and remember, or listening, and remember, question everything and stay weird.
In the quiet of the night, when the world feels far, there's a voice through the static, like a falling star. It calls the misfits, the dreamers, the ones who see the shadows in the corners, the truth we barely believe. From the pine tree woods to the desert skies, they talk of ghosts and aliens with wonder in their eyes, not afraid to ask the questions that others won't dare, 'cause the world gets strange when you stop and stare. Come gather around where the weird ones are, by the fireside glow or a midnight car, where the stories run deep and the secrets fly like owls in the dark or stars in the sky. If you've ever felt lost, like you don't belong, you found your place, you found your song, right here where the weird ones are. They'll talk of cryptids, time slips, and deja vu, of spirits that linger, and what might be true. But more than the monsters, it's the people you'll find who dare to be open with curious minds. It's not about fear, it's the thrill of the ride, to question the world with wonder as guide. So pull up a chair, let your freak flag fly, we're the seekers of truth beneath the sky. Yeah, come gather around where the weird ones are, on the moonlit thoughts and cosmic scars, where the veil feels thin and the questions burn, and we chase the strange at every turn. You're not alone, not in the dark, you're with a tribe. You found the spark right here where the weird ones are. For the ones who wonder, for the ones who know, welcome home.